I'm Mel.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Beck. And this is We Are Woman.
So here's something we've been thinking about. Women lead. We always have. But most of us don't see ourselves as leaders because leadership has been defined in such a narrow, masculine way. But leadership is also what happens when you're steady yourself before a hard conversation, when you're the one who listens deeply, when your friend calls you in tears and you instinctively become her anchor, when you walk into a chaotic space and bring clarity without saying a word. Leadership is the way you calm a room at work, the way you sense what's needed in a moment, the way you hold your center when life gets messy. It's in the choices you make, the boundaries you set, the way you guide your own life, especially on the days you feel anything but together. Leadership is influence. It's emotional presence. It's your nervous system guiding the moment. And it's something every woman already does, everywhere. Today, we're unpacking all of this: how women lead, why we haven't called it leadership, and how breath brings us back to a more grounded, feminine way of holding our lives. Because whether you believe it or not, you're already a leader. Your body knows how, your breath knows how, and we can remember that together. Okay, so we're talking about leadership. So much has been said in the last couple of decades about leadership. So why are we talking about it today?
Yeah, I think this is a really important question, right? Because we're exploring. I think we want to start what is leadership and why is it important and really what is it, yeah, to begin with. And so for me, what is leadership? It's a way of being in the world. And I often say to my clients, and Beck, I know you say the same as well, is leading is actually a verb. So rather than really saying leadership, it's actually more about leading. And it's a verb and it's an active participation into something. And it's an active choice also, in my opinion, in my viewpoint. And in that we can influence the world within us, but also around us. And and in that we also can realize our influence. And for me, that is a very important part of leadership as well, is the realization that we impact our environment, that we impact ourselves, that we impact the spaces and the people around us, and the realization on, first and foremost, that we do that, but then how we do that is where the leading comes in, is where the choice points come in, is where the also the deeper responsibility really also comes in my opinion. So yeah, that's just my viewpoint on leadership. Yeah, curious to hear back also what you think of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think leadership is an action. And then if leadership is an action, it actually belongs to everyone. We don't need a title to say that we're a leader because within all of us is our own leadership. As Mel said, leadership, particularly the conversation around women's leadership, has been around quite a lot over the last 2 decades. And I think something that I've really noticed is this idea of leaning in and having a seat at the table is really leading from a place of other people's leadership and trying to find other people's skills within ourselves and stepping up in that space. Whereas what I think we're starting to see more so, and the reason why this is important now, is we've got this whole movement around what does it mean to be me and really embody all of those parts that make me. And so rather than trying to have a seat at the table as someone else, masking myself to fit in, I'm really starting to understand who I am and really bring and accept and understand all of those parts of me that are going to allow me to lead from a place of embodiment, which itself is a practice, right? We are continually working to be in embodiment. So every day is part of that practice. It's the same as leadership. So I really see that now is the time where more of us are ready to step into and understand what we have to offer in that space and to really take pride in those qualities that actually are leadership, the quiet leadership, this the sort of still and soft leadership that isn't always spoken about.
Mm, I love that. It's almost like really redefining leadership, and really it's almost the highest form of self-leadership on some levels, where it's kind of where it starts, is what I'm hearing as well, and what you're saying back. And also, if I apply my own lenses to that, when we really, or what I feel for myself at least, is when I really reclaim these different parts of myself. Yeah, that could be, the brave girl, the courageous girl, but also the more quiet girl, maybe, that listens more and it is kind of sitting a bit more in the back, and observes more, and is taking a lot of the world in that way, and in a lot of the dynamics in that way. That is really the highest form of leadership, and it really starts with the embodiment of our own selves more fully. I wonder how in that almost leadership has a lot to do with love, is what comes up for me. I know I'm taking a little bit of a side angle here, but how leadership also has to do with really loving ourselves more fully on some level.
Yeah, so beautiful because I do think that as we come from a place of, for me, it's love and almost a level of compassion, which I'm really starting to lean into this idea of feeling compassion towards myself. And as I do, I feel like the power and the leadership comes alive as a result of that as well. Yeah, it's such a beautiful concept that the more we reflect that love inwards, the more our parts feel free to be seen and they become the strength that drives our leadership.
Mm, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, and how then love is really, really leadership. It's almost like the same thing then, right? Or leadership is love, love is leadership, and how love is such a powerful and transformative quality really to embody. And then yeah, I believe that in the space of love, things flourish. Like if the I mean, there's a whole bunch of research done on this, right? Where they have two plants, one gets love written on it and one gets written on stupid or something, or something silly. And then the plant that has written love on it grows way bigger and way faster and blooms way more. And obviously, I mean, I believe that it works the same for us. And so if we can nourish these parts of ourselves and actually love these different parts of ourselves more fully, our leadership will naturally grow from that place. And that is a radical difference. It's such a radical different perspective from in that what you said back, like taking the seat on the table as someone else, because we're almost in that self-abandoning ourselves. And in that, it's actually a lack of love on some level that is driving that, or that would be driving that kind of choices and behaviors, is that we're not showing up as our full selves, not showing up as the uniqueness of who we are, but trying to be someone else. And in the abandonment of that, we're not actually loving ourselves fully. And in that, we're actually giving away our leadership.
Mm,
So it's this full
mm.
180 shift into coming back to ourselves. And in that, we find our leadership. And that takes a lot of courage, right? I mean, it takes a lot of courage to really go almost against the norm, if you will, and really turn more inwards, and then start to move from that place and start to inhabit ourselves from that place.
Mm. Thank you both so much to speaking to this because what's coming up for me, and I wonder if there's listeners that could resonate with this, is so I definitely want to stay with this, but my biggest realization for me in terms of my leadership was that I already am a leader and the qualities that I have in myself were already leadership qualities. And I think that speaks to what you've both brought in here so beautifully, is that love, is that self-compassion. And for me, it was also a belief in myself as well. And I think it's awesome that we've started this conversation here at the point where we're saying love is leadership and self-compassion is leadership, because I wonder how mainstream that concept is, or is that something that we usually think of when we think of leadership? And for me personally, I don't think it would have been once upon a time. So I love that we're bringing that in here.
Yeah, I think we're almost stripping it back, right? We're completely
Mm,
turning the table on that, because at least my traditional perspective on leadership would have been, or leading or leadership would have been, I need to develop XYZ qualities
mm,
in order to be quote unquote a leader, or considered to be a leader, or even do workshops, or run workshops, or things like that, or show up in meetings in a particular way, or things like that. I need to develop XYZ qualities. And it's not to not have ambition. I think that is really important to nuance as well. Like, in my opinion, it's great to develop
mm,
qualities and to have ambition and to strive for something, if you will, but it coming from a place of already feeling enough.
mm.
I think
Mm.
is I think is a
Yeah.
very big piece of difference there. So if we already feel enough within ourselves, the qualities then that we then choose to embody, or that we and the differences that we strive for, comes from a place of creation and creativity and abundance and radiance, as opposed to from a place of lack and
Mm.
some sort of hole we might need to fill within ourselves. Because that's not really leadership, is it? If we have some sort of hole we need to fill with, we have a feeling that we need to fill within ourselves, we're more detracting probably from our environment than really giving in some way.
Mm,
We're
Yeah.
probably more coming from a more of an energy of, I need you to, maybe, and it could be like, I need you to give me recognition, or I need this title to feel good about myself, or I need this next job opportunity to feel good about myself, or this next sales, or whatever it might be, as opposed to really coming through the lens of, actually, I've got so much fullness and so much enoughness and goodness already within me. And how can I really shine that outward into the world, that other people and the planet and, the larger organism that I'm a part of can really benefit from?
mm.
And again, so that kind of leadership is really different. But I think it is important to speak to, most of us do get conditioned through various means, or we take on the beliefs that we are not enough in some levels. So the pathway home to really reclaiming that we are enough is a whole other journey in and of itself.
It's so beautiful to define leadership in this way. And what I really recognize in myself is how love has impacted and brought out better versions, more natural versions of my leadership across multiple parts of my life, but in particular in places where I often feel the smallest. And it's really interesting because I'm often facilitating for groups of 20, 30, up to 50 people in organizations, really big organizations. And in those moments, I feel amazing. And back in the day, about 20 years ago, I would joke that the reason why I felt amazing was because I was like Sasha Fierce. I don't know if you guys, do you
I
know Sasha
love that.
Fierce?
Yes.
Yeah.
The stage
So
name.
so, I mean, if you're not a Beyonce fan, you might not know what Sasha Fierce is, but that's her stage persona. And back when she was with Destiny's Child and she described feeling afraid to get on stage, she would put on Sasha Fierce and get on stage. And so I used to think, this is my Sasha Fierce. I'm putting on this and I'm getting on stage, so to speak, and I'm facilitating these programs. And I feel so good about it because I'm not me, I'm Sasha Fierce. But it's actually only recently that I've realized it's not the case at all. I am facilitating these workshops And I'm feeling like I love this version of me. And the reason why I love this version of me, the reason why it always feels in flow when I'm facilitating, even if I'm facilitating something I'm not as confident with, is because I really come to feel really close to that part of me. And I love feeling into that part of me. I can see the nuance between where am I feeling into this love and leadership compared to where am I putting this person in this seat at this table. And I'm
Mm.
just wondering if either of you are really have had points in your life where you've started to notice that nuance and where that love has helped you define a more authentic leadership.
Yeah, I love this, Beck. As I sit here and I listen to what you're speaking to, I can bring up memories where my leadership has been so effective, yet it's been in those softer, quieter moments where I have been really in touch with myself and come from a place of self love, self compassion, and guided a moment from that place. And it wasn't where I was bringing too much energy or trying to perform or trying to be more. And this can even be, moments at home with my kids when I've helped, my son through a difficult decision. And it's been those softer, quieter moments where my leadership, those moments have been some of my proudest moments in leadership. And then even for the same at work, I can have a moment where I really, yeah, soften, be kind of take a step back, check in with myself and lead from there. And then I look back and I think, wow, that was one of my most effective moments because I was in touch with myself. I wasn't trying to lead or trying to be more. I was just coming from a place of love and truth within myself. So I love that you've brought that in because I was thinking that's exactly what those moments have been about for me
Mm.
too.
Yeah, it sounds like I love this conversation because it sounds like for both of you, as at least how I'm receiving it and hearing it, is that there's a sense of ease and a sense of flow in those moments that starts to come through. And I think for me, look, I loved being on the catwalk in the modeling industry, right? When I was 14, 15, 16 years old and I was on the catwalk. Wow, that was great. I enjoyed that very much. Um, and like kind of like similar to how you were describing it back, it really gives like this boost of energy and I felt amazing afterwards and so on. And so I really enjoyed those moments. And I'm sure I'll still do if I don't really catwalk that much anymore, but maybe one day. Um, if I was to come back to that, I would probably enjoy it again a lot. What I noticed for me in that journey, however, was that part became too strong that it almost couldn't switch off. And so what happened for me was that even outside of, let's say, the catwalk context or in front of a photo shoot or something, I would still have kind of that performative part on in the rest of my life as well, even in moments where it wasn't needed. So, for example, with my family or friends or other people around me. And so I found that that part was too strong for me and it wasn't integrated or balanced. Then what happened is I kind of swang all the way the other end, which was I don't want to have anything to do with this kind of thing, and I don't want to perform at all costs kind of thing. And I want it to be all natural and free flowing, and it needs to just all be easy kind of thing. And all it's kind of I started to really go into that direction. But really, what I'm now starting to see and realize more was that I needed to go into really high performing environment. Then I needed to get out of that into this real more kind of flowy environment. I just needed to really reclaim that old part of me that didn't really have the opportunity to develop. I guess because I was also 14 years old when I went into the modeling industry, which is obviously quite young. And now that I feel like I've reclaimed that part of me, I can really do kind of what you were speaking to back. So I can really be in the performative kind of role and actually just really enjoy it. I'm like, I totally am totally aware that I'm performing and I'm just loving it, right? But it's not overriding my natural instinct of also being in my heart and also being very relational. And so what comes up for me is also leadership for me, and that is recognizing phases in our life and recognizing where in certain contexts or in certain phases in our life or in these cycles that we are in, particularly also as women, and different parts of us can come forward and can do their thing and start to learn and express. And then there's other phases in our life where we maybe need to step back a little bit from that and actually allow the integration of that to happen or to soften that back a little bit. And then there's a phase where we can kind of come into the space again, but more balanced, yeah, and more harmonized. And I look at it also through the lens of what I now do with a lot of people in my one-on-one work as well, is a lot of polarity integration, a lot of sort of kind of parts work. So working with these different sort of sub-personalities and how they really, if a sub-personality is too strong and not integrated with the rest, it becomes a burden. But if it's integrated with the rest, it's beautiful. It's actually a strength. Yeah, it becomes something we can leverage in the right moments. And that's what I found in my own experience, for example, with this performative part that was so well developed in the modeling industry. And now I can really use it to my advantage in many environments as well, without overriding the natural instincts that are here as well. So yeah, it just brings me to this next inquiry around leadership, around how important it is to recognize that there are cycles and phases that we operate within, and then recognize that it's always changing. You know, our leadership and our leading is always changing, and it's maybe about honoring that change that we really can grow and learn and keep going. Yeah, as opposed to having maybe this idea that it's a linear path somehow, or just an upward path. And there is just moments of creative destruction, is what I call it. It's kind of like where we do need to break down in order to break through and find a new path within ourselves, and how that is also really so important.
Yeah, that was beautiful the way you worded that, Sarah. What comes up for me is you used a word that I think is at the key to this, and it's that natural, where leadership can come naturally. So then that honors the cycles, it honors the phases we're in. But also I think it speaks to that leadership comes from a natural energy. And speaking into phases, I know that, and we'll get into this later, but through FBR breathwork and my more somatic processes, what came to my awareness was when I'm over functioning in leadership, how draining that is on my body and the effect that that has. Um, so I think, therefore, that brings in the idea that I'm not using natural energy at that point, I'm forcing it. And then to be able to see that has then allowed me to really value those softer moments where I've noticed there hasn't even been an energy per se. It's just been a real natural ease, as you mentioned, and I've been able to lead from that point of view as well. And I think that really speaks to those cycles and those phases and just being okay with them as well. I'm very grateful to have realized that my overfunctioning as a leader has had a cost on my nervous system, because now I can honor that and then lean into more of a natural style of leadership.
Yeah, that's right. Like if we need to sometimes lose ourselves to then come back to parts of ourselves, and that is actually
Yeah.
such an important part of our reclaiming and of the cycle. And without the actual losing of ourselves or going too far maybe into, yeah, whether it is performance or overdrive or whatever it may be, we wouldn't have realized certain things about ourselves, right? So I
Mm.
see just the whole journey as one big beautiful part of learning, right? And maybe leadership is around recognizing that it's all learning and all
Mm.
growing.
And what you were saying, Mel, it really made me wonder this sort of performative leadership. And I wonder if part of that is we've just lost cycles through the process of stepping into our work patterns in general. So we don't honor the cycles because we go from step one to step two, and step two might be a team leader to a leader to a bigger leader to a bigger leader. And actually, that's not the rhythm of our bodies and our lives in
Mm,
general anyway, that leadership is more like seasons, that the rose blossoms in spring, it blooms in summer, then the rosebud falls off and we need to crop it back in winter. And that's really the same cycles that we go through. And the way in which our society prioritizes what good looks like makes us feel like we have to be continually in bloom.
mm,
And I think what you're describing so beautifully is being able to recognize through practices like FBR and your somatic practices, and as Sarah's been describing around understanding our parts, is that really leadership is knowing what part of the cycle we're in and what we really need in this moment.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know
mm,
if you guys are familiar with the eco cycle. It's a very powerful, I guess, lens to what exactly what you were speaking to back, the lens of we go through a phase of creativity and creation, and there's a maturity at some point that we're reaching at. And in that maturity, we kind of start to feel comfortable at some point, whether that is a project, whether that's mothering with a child, whether that's a relationship, could be anything. And then once the maturity happens, we kind of can get too comfortable in that. But what really needs to happen is that we need to have a process of creative destruction that comes with that. And a lot of the time, this is where a lot of people get stuck because they want to stay in the maturity kind of forever because that feels so
mm,
good. They feel like they've mastered their skill or their craft or their their thing, whatever their thing may be. But actually, we need to go into the creative destruction. And it that is the creative destruction is a phase that is described as something we're actively rethinking or changing somehow for the better later on, but it often means we need to let go of something we've created before. And so what the eco cycle then describes is that there's a rigidity trap that can start to happen. And is that trap really describes that there's something we should actually let go of or change, but somehow we still keep doing it because it feels comfortable or like the same, right?
mm,
So there's the rigidity trap that can happen before the creative destruction. But once we can lean into the creative destruction, we can let go of things, we can change things, we can rethink parts within ourselves or parts within our organization or within a team, for example. And then we go into gestation period, something we're currently doing and still might continue in the future or might not continue in the future. So we kind of go into refinement. Yeah, we're making things more nuanced, more refined. But what can happen in that is that we then also need to let go again, which is what we call then the scarcity trap can come in. Something we consider valuable but don't invest enough time in is kind of what can come in there, is that we have something we consider to be valuable, but we don't dare to make time for it because again, stuck in comfort. And that's actually what can then stop us from going into another phase of birth. So it's kind of a different way of describing of what you said back around the seasons, maybe, or the cycles of the seasons. This is also a cycle of, it's called the eco cycle, and it happens in micro and macro moments in our lives. And it's a very natural process of creation and creativity, and also how we can lead, for example, business or an organization or team or even a household. But we get stuck in these, often the rigidity trap or the scarcity trap. So we get stuck in these traps after a phase often of maturity or comfort of some sort. So we get too comfortable almost, and then we get stuck, which is interesting, isn't it? Like the moment we get comfortable, we kind of just want to stay
mm.
there. I think that's a human thing. But yeah, to actually start leaning into change again, that is leading, isn't it? To keep leaning into change.
Yeah, I can feel my body getting a bit excited here as we're redefining what leadership is and using these beautiful words like change and cycles. I think where we've got to here is that leadership is really understanding that idea of life being cyclical and coming from a place of love and understanding where we are in the cycle and being prepared to be and feel into that part of the cycle, wherever it is, and recognize that it might feel really horrible compared to that real full bloom, but that's okay. And we need that because actually we need the polarities. We don't know how good the full bloom feels unless we feel what it looks like to be in the depths as well. So being able to lead and be fully embodied in ourselves at any point in that cycle.
Yeah, and I feel this is where real feminine or female leadership comes in, isn't it? Because just looking at the female body, we're used to go through these. We're every month we go through a cycle. We go through this cycle. We bleed, and then we really need to rest and take more time for ourselves. And then 2 weeks later is ovulation, and we feel, at least I feel, on top of the world. um, so I feel this is the importance of females in the workforce as well, in the workplace, is because we can actually teach the man or show the man on some level some clarity around, hey, this is a way of leading that is more in tune with nature, with cycles, with rhythms that are more natural for all beings, really. And it actually invites in more creativity. And funnily enough, I think it's probably more effective. But because we are so fed with an old narrative around needing to be fast and we needing to be in growth pretty much all the time, otherwise there's something wrong with the business, for example. That is a radical different way of looking at leadership. And even if someone conceptually understand this, I find, because I do workshops with teams and organizations on this as well, even if people understand this conceptually, it's still very difficult for most people to allow that to happen. And so this is, I think, where we need the embodiment, a component of this really as well. Like, where is the embodiment in this? We really need to move beyond conception into how is this actually embodied on a large scale as well. And that's going to be, in my opinion, quite important for the world today, and also the world that we're moving into in the near future.
So that sounds like a good point for us to maybe talk about the practices that allow us to carve out the space to be able to embody all of this. And I know, particularly for all of us, FBR breathwork has been a really special part of that practice. Mel, because you're leading a team, how has that supported you through having these embodied practices? How have you noticed it's changed your leadership?
Yeah, this is such a great question, Beck. For me personally, my leadership used to come from a place of over functioning, probably being hooked on what we were speaking to before in terms of just being hooked on having to grow and not probably respecting and acknowledging those cycles that we go through in leadership and that are completely healthy. So for me, it really did come down to slowing down, and that is as simple as pausing and taking a breath with a bit of a longer exhale. Um, and just being able to slow down and realize, where is this coming from? A place of, natural energy, authenticity, or where is it that I'm coming from a place of over functioning and having to potentially, what I believed was, hold things together or, soothe everybody. And it really played out in sort of every area of work and at home, not just at work, to be honest. But for me personally, it was as simple as slowing down and taking a breath. Through engaging in FBR breathwork in particular, finding layers and points in my body where I was able to recognize, oh, when this comes online, I'm potentially trying to hold this together, or I'm potentially coming from a place that isn't quite authentic, but more from over functioning, and just being able to scan the body in the moment when I'm at work, or even, as I said, at home, even in relationships. Like this is actually for me very relational for me as well. Yeah, so deep breaths and scanning the body on a regular basis. And I still do that now. This isn't something I've mastered. As we've mentioned, yeah, I'm by no means at the finishing line with any of this. I still engage in this every single day to keep myself, yeah, just coming from that place of softness and love for myself and that I don't have to perform anything out there in terms of, leadership.
I love the idea that any of our listeners can really easily pick up that practice, right? We can all take a moment if we notice we're getting agitated or frustrated or angry or even excited or joyful, just to notice what's going on for us in those moments that are creating some of that energy in our body.
Yeah, I love that. And I wonder, Mel, and I love for how you're describing this. I wonder what was for you the, I guess, the indicator or the recognition that slowing down was so helpful? Like, how did you know that that was going to benefit you?
Because I think I had become aware of the fast pace of my body, of my actions, of my words, of my thoughts, of my system. Even, if we're speaking directly to the embodiment of that, it would be the chest breathing that was quite fast. It would be the heart rate that would be beating. Just like boom, 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 boom. It was just the pace at which I did most things and how I functioned, and realizing that a body can't continue at that pace. If we're just speaking, specifically to the body. And also in that fast pace, there was a lack of presence in everyday moments, and just across my whole life. So it was really from a physical point of view, just really realizing at which the pace I live from, to be honest, it was fast and very, just from a place of over functioning.
Yeah, I can really relate to that as well, particularly the fast pacedness of the body. And I know for myself, I first wasn't even realizing I was in a fast pace. It was just kind of my normal. It was just a normal way of operating for me until I started to, I guess, also do more of the practices, funnily enough. Like, it's this funny thing. I feel like sometimes we find the practices, but also the practices kind of find us. And I found that particularly also with FBR breathwork, and that's where I really started to notice the contrast. I'm not sure if that was the same for you, but the contrast between this fast pace and then, oh, actually I can slow down and not the whole world is going to kind of fall apart kind of feeling. Like, it's still all going to be fine, That for me was a really big difference as well. Just really noticing, I guess, the contrast between the more fast pace and the benefits of actually slowing down and noticing so much more subtleties and nuances, both within myself and externally, and how that helped all areas of life, really. Yeah, so beautiful.
I feel like also we speak into the softness and the contrast between the sort of like the fast pace and then potentially the slower pace. For me, I think also what I caught at the beginning when I first started engaging in this practice was how easily I could go into sort of an activating breath or a fast pace, and how hard I found it on the opposite to actually slow down or to be with myself. So while that contrast, yes, was definitely at play, it was also at first, I believed there was an inability for me to be able to slow down. I was thought, I can't do this. Why am I finding this so hard? So that really began my exploration into, why am I living so fast paced? Why am I leading from this position of, over functioning and that fast pacedness? And then what would happen if I started slowing down? I wonder what else is available.
It's so interesting because I really have such a different experience of what comes up for me and how I got into more of those somatic practices, because I was always exhausted, but even in doing nothing, I felt like I was exhausted. I was disconnected even in the space of what I thought was relaxation. And I didn't realize that I wasn't in deep relaxation. I was just in deep disconnect. And it's because everything felt like an act. I'd go into every situation and feel like I'd have to act. And for those that can't see me, I'm 5 foot nothing. I'm not even 5 foot, to be perfectly honest. And I'd walk into these boardrooms with mostly all men or with women that were acting like men, and I'd feel like I'd have to meet them where they were. And in my family, everyone talks about these beautiful, strong, powerful women, and I've always felt like I've had to be this person. And I think I wasn't even going fast paced. I didn't have it in me to go fast paced. I really was a
Mm,
walking zombie. But what's really
mm,
interesting is at the start of my breathwork journey, felt quite panicked in the relaxation phase of breath work. And I think part of my process has been reconnecting with what it's like to come back to my body from a place of almost nothing and beginning again. Or what
mm.
felt like nothing, because I just felt so disconnected and I was missing hunger cues and, fatigue cues and all of the sort of messaging that was going on in my body. So I really never witnessed the pace, even though others would describe that within me. I haven't witnessed it in myself. I've just noticed sort of this sort of walking disconnected human. And it's just, I've found it until very recently such an interesting inquiry that I felt so panicked in that really beautiful relaxation phase, which is now my absolute favorite phase, especially with my weighted blankets. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
raise that because it's so interesting to note that as we're coming back to that really beautiful, loving, embodied leadership, we might be discovering it from such different places.
Yeah, I think that's so important that you raise that
Mm,
back because we do have such different upbringings, all of us, and we have such different conditioning and therefore so many different patterns. And then our biology and our physiology is so different, right? So for all of us, it's all very unique and different. And that is actually one of the reasons I love FBR breathwork so much, is because it does really meet everyone in the way that they need to be met, whether that is coming from more of a place of, yeah, disconnect or maybe numbness, I don't know what we want to label that, into more aliveness in the body versus, or what Mel and I were kind of describing, this really fast pace into actually more slowing down. And in that, how we can reclaim more nuance, I guess. Like that's what we're really looking for with this breath work, right? We're really looking for these different pathways into more capacity and more nuance as we really discover sometimes the other end of the spectrum that we've been operating in. And this is what I also do in a lot of polarity integration, which when I came into breathwork, I already had done so much polarity integration that I could just immediately apply that lens into the breath. And I really saw this is essentially polarity integration, but then in the body. And the body starts to actually integrate these different parts of us, these the fast and the slow. And now I can go fast, but I can also go slow. And that feels really good. I can go fast when I need to, which I is very important in life. Like if we do need to speed up, it's important that we are able to actually do that, right?
Mm.
But also when I'm sitting on the couch with sipping my tea, it's also important that I can just do that, right? And not feel zoned
mhm,
out or tuned out, or the feeling which I used to have is like this sort of guilt, underlying guilt feeling that I need to be doing something. So yeah, I guess I'm emphasizing that of like I love FBR breathwork for that reason, because it's such a natural breath. It really honors the natural breath and the natural way of breathing, and in that we can reclaim these different parts of ourselves that we all need to reclaim different things within ourselves in order to
mm,
come into wholeness. And really it's in the wholeness that we find that reconnection, which I love that you speak to that back. It's like moving from disconnect into connection, and maybe that is even a form of leadership, that we are more connected to ourselves, to one another, to our environment, to our honesty, our creativity, but also what is the world really asking of us, or what is really required here, as opposed to kind of coming on this autopilot, like this is what I think is going to be required based on my past experience. I'm not really attuned, am I? I'm not really listening to the environment. So I love this word of connection. And funnily enough, when we breathe with FBR, we breathe through a connected breath. So how beautiful that all of these things come together in connection again, or in cycles, if you will, is that as we connect our breath and we take away the pauses at the top and the bottom of the breath, and we start to loop our breath in this way, we find connection, and
mm,
we find that connection in ourselves with different parts of ourselves. In that, we feel more connected. And from that place, we can lead in the world with so much more attunement, which ultimately is also connection, which then leads to more and more connection. And if I look at just if we put up the polarization or the opposite of that, which is there's a lot of polarization in the world. There's actually a lot of separation. There's a lot of the other side of connection, if you will. And so to lead with connected leadership and to actually see that connection is the pathway forward or home, if you will, is I'm just realizing this now, right? It's for me, it's quite a profound realization that is really the way we want to lead, or at least for me, how I want to lead in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the body, the breath is showing us what leadership truly is for us.
And maybe it's always a continuous exploration, which it always will be, but in the curiosity of just simply laying down on the mat over and over again, connecting our breath, we will find these different pathways.
That's so beautiful. Love it.
Breath is leadership.
Pretty much. And then I think even just that one moment when you lie down on the mat, and like now I'm having this realization, but that's leadership. That's self-leadership. You lie down and you connect with your breath and you're leading yourself. It is very esoteric right now. But I'm just, yeah, that's really landing for me now too, actually.
Yeah, beautiful.
And it's right under our noses. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Don't
How
mind the
simple
pun.
can it be, right? It's like, oh, the connection, and also honoring that, like we do sometimes need. I think we spoke to it before that we need to sometimes disconnect in order to reconnect, and that is a part of the journey or a part of the leadership or of the way home, if you will. And so maybe even on some level, and I'm applying a very positive lens on, the world and ourselves and everything that's happening in the world, including whatever is to come with AI and you name it, is that maybe the more we go into disconnection, the more we actually will find connection as well. That will be beautiful. That would be my hope.
I have been thinking about this a lot because at times it kind of feels like our world is going through its own moment of the dark night of the soul, just with all of the goings on. And I've been sitting with this actually in my own breath practices. Why would all of this be taking place in this moment? And I think this is our moment that is going to be the catalyst for all of this beautiful, all of everything we've been speaking about, this beautiful natural way that women lead to really rise and step up into our space, our time to really, what I see is potentially changing the trajectory of how we move into the next decade and the decades after. Women's leadership, it's not a book. It's our own book and it's our own practices. And as you said right at the very start, Sarah, leadership is in action. So it's our own actions. And that's how we discover what leadership is for us.
Yeah, and it's already within our bodies. We just need to kind of breathe life into it, like literally. And that's what I love so much about breathwork. We get to literally breathe life into ourselves, into our bodies, and therefore into our leadership quality.
Yeah, so beautiful.
I love that we speak to a practice in terms of FBR that also is something that, we can take time to do for ourselves as well. Throughout this whole conversation, what's coming up for me, and it's really just to circle back to the beginning where we started, where we raised the point that it's about coming back to yourself as well. And it probably speaks to that concept of, putting your oxygen mask on first before you assist others. That kind of idea, because if you reconnect to yourself, reclaim parts of yourself, then you can lead from there. then that will, yeah, it just kind of like circles back to come back to yourself first. And for me, maybe what's coming up here is that with everything we've just spoken about the love and the self-compassion, it starts with yourself. And that's how you can lead others. And that's how you can lead a room. And that's how you can lead in relationships. It's about coming back to yourself. And what better way with a beautiful practice to just lie down with yourself and breathe.
I love that.
Before we close today, we want to leave you with something. Leadership isn't something you have to earn. It isn't something you need a title for. It isn't something reserved for confident people or mothers or CEOs or the women who seem to have everything together. Leadership lives in the way you move through your life, in the way you care, the way you adapt, the way you tell the truth, the way you stay gentle, the way you choose yourself, even when that feels like the hardest thing to do. It's in the moments you steady yourself when no one is watching. It's in the way you show up for others and for yourself. Today was an invitation to notice the places you've been leading all along, not with force or perfection or performance, but with presence. And if you take anything from this conversation, let it be this. Your leadership is already here, in your breath, in your body, in the way you listen, respond, soften, and rise. You don't have to become a leader. You already are one. We're just remembering it together. So that's all from us today. Thank you so much for tuning in to We Are Woman. I hope today's conversation gave you something to reflect on, to feel into, or to carry with you into the rest of your week. Please make sure to click subscribe on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss the latest episodes as they drop. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a woman that would find it helpful, because this isn't just our podcast, it's all of ours, together. You can also follow us on Instagram at We Are Woman Podcast to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join our growing sisterhood. We've got some very special events planned and would love for you to be a part of them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being exactly who you are.